If you can't pay rent, get out, my aunt screamed, her voice slicing through the thin walls of the old house like a blade. I remember the way her eyes blazed, fury, frustration, and a touch of triumph, as though she finally had the upper hand after years of looking down on me. She didn't know, of course. She didn't know that the meek, quiet niece she'd mocked and bossed around for years wasn't the same girl anymore. She didn't know that the very house she was standing in, the one she claimed as her territory, was no longer hers to command. My name is Amelia, and this is Amelia Voice, the channel where real stories unravel the truth behind ordinary lives. But before you decide who's right or wrong, let me take you back to how it all began. The day everything changed, the day I went from broke and desperate to the owner of the home my aunt thought she ruled. For years, I had been the black sheep of the family. While my cousins went to college, landed fancy jobs, and posted perfect Instagram lives, I struggled to make rent, juggled 3 jobs, and tried to keep my sanity. My Aunt Marlene, loved to remind me how much of a disappointment I was. "You should have listened to your mother," she'd say, sipping her overpriced wine while I scrubbed her kitchen floor. "You can't survive on dreams, Amelia. You need stability. Stability." The word haunted me. It echoed through every rejection letter, every landlord's notice, every night I fell asleep wondering if I'd ever be enough. When my mom passed away, Aunt Marlene took me in, as she liked to say, though it felt more like she took me down. I wasn't family. I was free labor with emotional baggage. I cooked, cleaned, ran errands, and lived in a tiny back room that smelled of mildew. But I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. Until one night, something changed. I was working late at a cafe, wiping tables and counting coins for the bus, when I overheard 2 men talking. They were discussing a foreclosure auction, how properties sometimes went for pennies because no one wanted the hassle of fixing them up. Something in me sparked. What if I could buy something, anything? Even a rundown place could be a start. I spent the next few weeks researching, learning about auctions, loans, and paperwork. I found a property listing that made my heart stop. It was my aunt's street. The very neighborhood where she bragged about her high-value home. Out of curiosity, I clicked on it and froze. Her address, her exact house, up for auction in 2 weeks due to unpaid taxes. I couldn't believe it. Aunt Marlene, the queen of stability, hadn't paid her taxes for years. Maybe she'd spent too much keeping up appearances. Maybe she thought she was untouchable. But the city didn't care about pride. They wanted their money. I didn't sleep that night. My brain raced with possibilities, fears, and the ghost of my mother whispering, "Don't let them break you, Amelia." I knew I had to try. I cashed out my tiny savings, sold my old laptop, and even borrowed from a friend who believed in my plan. I went to that auction with my heart in my throat and my hands shaking. There were older men in suits, a few investors, and me, a girl in a thrift store blazer clutching her dreams like a lifeline. When the bidding started, I thought I'd have no chance. But one by one, they dropped out. Maybe they thought the house was too much trouble, too personal. When the auctioneer slammed his gavel and said, "Sold," I could barely breathe. The house was mine. My aunt's house. The one I had scrubbed and suffered in. The one she'd used to make me feel small. I didn't tell her right away. I wanted to see what power felt like when you didn't have to announce it. The transfer took a few weeks, and during that time, Aunt Marlene kept treating me the same, ordering me around, complaining about money, and blaming me for every tiny inconvenience. One morning, she handed me a bill and said, "Since you're living here rent-free, you can at least pay the utilities this month." Something inside me clicked. The papers had just come through that morning. The deed was in my name. The house was officially mine. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who had spent her life towering over others to hide her own cracks. And I smiled. "Actually, Aunt Marlene," I said softly, "about that rent." She turned annoyed. "What now? You're not paying again?" I let out a small laugh. "You're right. I'm not paying rent." She slammed her coffee mug down so hard it cracked. "Then get out, Amelia. If you can't pay rent, get out of my house." Her words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I could feel years of pain, humiliation, and exhaustion boiling to the surface. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, and slid it across the table toward her. "That's the deed," I said quietly. "You might want to read the name on it before you tell me to leave." For a moment, she didn't understand. Then she opened the papers, her eyes scanning, confusion turning to disbelief. This is some kind of joke," she stammered. "It's not," I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. "The house went up for auction. I bought it." Silence filled the kitchen. She looked up, her face pale, her lips trembling. "You?" she whispered. "You bought my house?" "Our house," I corrected, standing tall. "Though technically it's mine now." The clock ticked between us. She blinked, speechless, and for the first time, I saw her without her armor. Just a woman who'd built her world on control and was watching it crumble. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I'd already won. But what came next I never expected. Because my aunt wasn't the type to give up power quietly. She stared at me for a long, trembling moment, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the edge of the table. I thought she might faint or lunge at me. Instead, she started to laugh. It wasn't the soft, amused laugh of someone taking bad news with grace. No, it was sharp, jagged, almost manic. "You?" she said between fits of laughter. "You? The little girl who couldn't even keep a job? Who begged me for bus fare last year? You're telling me you bought this house?" Her voice rose with every word, disbelief melting into fury. I didn't flinch. I'd imagined this confrontation 100 times in my head, her yelling, me standing calm, but living it was strangely surreal. I felt light, free. "Believe whatever you want," I said evenly, "but the papers are real. The house is mine now. You don't have to leave immediately, but we'll need to talk about what comes next." Her laughter stopped abruptly. "What comes next?" she repeated, venom dripping from her words. "You think you can just waltz in here and play landlord? You think you can boss me around now?" I opened my mouth to respond, but she was already storming toward me, her eyes wild. "You ungrateful little snake. I took you in when no one else would. I fed you, gave you a roof over your head, and this is how you repay me? By stealing my home?" I stood my ground, even though her words hit hard. "I didn't steal anything, Aunt Marlene. You lost it. You stopped paying taxes. The city took it. I just happened to be the one who bought it back. You could have done the same." Her face twisted. "You think I didn't know? You think I didn't try?" she shouted. "But I was waiting for an extension, for the bank to fix it. I didn't think—" She stopped herself mid-sentence, realizing she'd said too much. "Didn't think?" I said quietly. "That's how you treated everyone, isn't it? You just assumed people like me would always stay beneath you, that you'd always have control." She glared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find words sharp enough. Finally, she spat. "You won't last a month. You think owning a house makes you powerful? You have no idea what you're doing, Amelia. The bills, the upkeep, the taxes, it'll crush you." "Maybe," I said. "But at least I'll be the one making the mistakes this time. My life. My choices." She turned away, muttering curses under her breath, slamming cabinets and drawers as if she could break her anger into smaller, manageable pieces. I watched her, remembering every time she'd belittled me, every time she'd called me a burden. And yet, despite everything, a small part of me still felt pity. Maybe because I saw her now for what she truly was, a scared woman who'd built her sense of worth around control, and without it, she was nothing. The following days were tense. We barely spoke. She locked herself in her room most of the time, only coming out to glare at me or make snide remarks. But something unexpected happened. The more silent the house became, the more I realized how empty it had always been. I started cleaning out old rooms, throwing away junk she'd hoarded for years. Each bag I carried out felt like shedding another layer of her control. I painted walls, fixed leaky faucets, replaced light bulbs. It was exhausting, but it was mine. For the first time, every drop of sweat had purpose. One evening, as I was painting the hallway, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You think you're smart, don't you?" It read, Enjoy it while it lasts. I froze. My heart pounded as I reread it. I didn't have enemies. Who could? Then it clicked. My aunt. I went to her room, but she wasn't there. The window was open, the curtains fluttering in the wind. I checked the driveway. Her car was gone. I stood in that quiet house, the smell of fresh paint mingling with fear, and realized this wasn't over. The next morning, a letter arrived. Not from her, but from a law firm. My aunt was contesting the sale, claiming I'd manipulated her and taken advantage of her vulnerable emotional state. I laughed bitterly. Vulnerable? She was the one who'd made me sleep in a room without heating during winter. She was the one who said no one would ever love or believe in me. I took the letter to a lawyer friend who helped me verify everything. The purchase was clean, legal, ironclad. Still, the stress of it all ate at me. For weeks, I lived in uncertainty, checking the mail with dread, jumping at every car that slowed near the house. My aunt called family members, spreading rumors that I'd stolen her inheritance, that I was a liar and manipulator. Some believed her. Others didn't. But what hurt the most was how quickly people judged, how easily they forgot who I was. I spent nights crying, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I'd bitten off more than I could handle. But every morning I'd walk through the house, touch the walls, and remind myself, this is mine. I earned this. I started documenting everything for my channel. My journey from being broke and homeless to owning the house that once symbolized my failure. I didn't name names, but I told the truth. The video went viral. People connected with it, sent messages of support, shared their own stories of reclaiming power. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the girl who couldn't pay rent. I was the woman who took her life back. Weeks later, my aunt returned. She didn't knock. She just walked in, as if it were still hers. But something in her had changed. She looked tired, older. Her confidence dimmed. "You got what you wanted," she said quietly. "I hope it makes you happy." "It's not about happiness," I said. "It's about freedom." She gave a hollow laugh. "Freedom," she muttered. "That's what I thought I had too." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You'll see one day, Amelia. Power always comes with a price." Then she was gone. I thought it was over, but it wasn't. Because the next morning, I found the word thief spray-painted across my front door in bold red letters. The red paint screamed at me in the morning light, dripping like blood down the front door. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at it, the metallic smell of spray paint mixing with the chill of dawn. Thief. One word, but it sliced through the silence like a blade. I didn't need to guess who had done it. Aunt Marlene's handwriting might as well have been written in fire. My hands trembled as I took a picture for proof, though a part of me hesitated. Proof meant confrontation, and confrontation meant chaos. I wanted peace, but she wasn't going to give it. Not after what she'd lost. I scrubbed the paint for hours, my knuckles raw, but the faint outline refused to disappear completely. It was as if the house itself wanted to remind me that freedom always leaves a stain. That night as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every whisper of wind sounded like footsteps. The walls, once a symbol of victory, now felt like they were closing in. I'd wanted this home to be a new beginning, but it had become a battlefield. I decided the next morning I wouldn't let her win, not with fear. I installed cameras, changed the locks, and started documenting every strange noise, every unexplained thing. My subscribers, my Amelia Voice family, watched in suspense as I shared snippets of my days. "You're braver than I could ever be," one comment said. "Turn that pain into power." Those words became my anchor. Slowly, I began reclaiming my space again. I started redecorating, room by room, transforming each corner into something that reflected me, not her. The floral wallpaper she loved was replaced with soft cream paint. Her glass figurines went into boxes. I built my own little studio by the window, a small desk, a microphone, a lamp. That's where I began telling my story. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. The same house that once echoed her cruel words now amplified my voice. But the peace didn't last long. One afternoon, as I recorded a new video about rebuilding your life from the ground up, I noticed a car parked across the street. It was an old blue sedan, hers. My stomach dropped. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just coincidence, but it became a pattern. The car would show up for hours, then vanish. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her through the windshield, watching. Once I walked outside and waved. She didn't wave back. Just drove away. The psychological warfare began to wear me down. Doors left ajar that I was sure I'd locked, mail missing, mysterious calls in the middle of the night with no one on the other end. My friends told me to call the police, but part of me couldn't. Because admitting it meant acknowledging she still had power over me. Then came the day I received the letter. It wasn't from a lawyer this time. It was handwritten, folded neatly, and slid under the door. I opened it with shaky hands. "You took my house," it read, "but you'll never make it yours. I built every wall with my hands. Every corner carries my name. You can't erase me, Amelia." The paper smelled like her perfume, sharp, floral, suffocating. I wanted to rip it apart, but instead I placed it in a drawer. Because a part of me knew this was far from over. Days turned into weeks, and slowly I began to rebuild my routine. The channel was growing faster than ever. People loved the rawness, the emotion, the redemption arc. From homeless to homeowner became a story that resonated deeply. I began speaking about generational trauma, about taking back your narrative, about how sometimes family can be your biggest battle. The irony was that every time I spoke, every time my voice reached thousands, it was her story that fueled me. Without realizing it, Aunt Marlene had become the ghost haunting not just my house, but my success. One night, I went live on my channel, answering questions from my followers. Someone asked, "If your aunt were watching this right now, what would you say to her?" I hesitated, staring into the camera. The chat flooded with heart emojis and fire icons, waiting. Finally, I said, "I'd tell her thank you." Because every cruel word, every door she slammed, every time she told me I'd fail, she built the fire that keeps me going now. The comments exploded with support. But as I ended the stream, I caught something that made my blood run cold. In the reflection of the window behind me, I saw a shadow moving outside. I turned slowly, heart hammering. The porch light flickered. I grabbed my phone and called out, "Who's there?" No answer, just the sound of footsteps retreating into the dark. I ran to the window, peered out, and there it was again. The old blue sedan parked across the street. My aunt's car. Only this time the driver's seat was empty. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I called the police. They came, took a report, and promised to patrol the area more often. But deep down, I knew she was still out there, waiting, watching. A week later, I came home from grocery shopping to find my front door slightly open. The lock wasn't broken, but the door frame had fresh scratches. I stepped inside cautiously. The air smelled faintly of her perfume again. Everything looked untouched, except the living room. On the coffee table sat a small photo frame I hadn't seen in years. It was me and her from when I was 15, smiling, happy before everything went wrong. Tucked behind it was another note. "You forgot who loved you first," it read. My knees nearly gave out. She'd been inside. I called the police again, but they couldn't do much. No forced entry, no proof. I changed the locks again, added alarms, even stayed at a friend's for a few nights. But I couldn't stay away from my home forever. I had fought too hard for it. So I returned. The next time I saw her, it wasn't from a distance. It was face to face. I came home one evening and found her sitting on the porch steps, waiting. She looked smaller than I remembered, her eyes dull but defiant. "You can call the cops if you want," she said. "But I'm not here to fight." I didn't say anything. "I lost everything, Amelia," she continued. "My house, my pride, my family. I don't even know who I am without this place." "Maybe that's the point," I said quietly. "You need to find out who you are without control." She looked at me for a long time, then nodded slowly. "You're stronger than I thought," she murmured. "Your mother would have been proud. That broke me." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "You don't get to say her name," I whispered. She nodded again, standing up. "Maybe not. But you should know, there's more to this house than you think." "What do you mean?" I asked, but she just gave a faint, knowing smile. "You'll find out," she said, walking away into the twilight. I stood frozen, her words echoing in my head. That night, I dreamed of my mother's voice calling my name, faint but urgent, coming from somewhere deep within the walls. I woke up drenched in sweat, the echo of my mother's voice still ringing in my ears. "Amelia, find it." The dream had been so vivid, so real, that for a moment I sat up in bed, convinced she was there. The room was dark, the air thick and heavy with silence. My heart pounded as I turned on the lamp. Nothing. Just my reflection staring back from the mirror, wide-eyed, pale, afraid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something in the house had shifted. That my aunt's last words, "You'll find out," weren't just empty spite. They were a warning. Or maybe a clue. I decided to search. At first, I told myself it was just curiosity. But deep down, I knew it was something else, an instinct pulling me toward the truth. I started with the basement, a place I rarely went. The air down there was cold, damp, and thick with dust. I shone my flashlight along the walls, brushing past cobwebs and boxes filled with my aunt's old junk. Bills, trinkets, newspaper clippings, all relics of her obsessive need to hold on to the past. But then I noticed something strange. Behind one of the heavy wooden shelves was a thin crack in the wall, just wide enough to suggest a hollow space behind it. My heart skipped. I pushed the shelf aside. It groaned under its own weight. And there it was, a small square outline in the concrete. A hidden panel. My hands trembled as I pressed against it, and with a little force, it gave way. Inside was a box. Old metal, rusted at the corners. I pulled it out, my pulse racing. There was no lock, just a latch. When I opened it, a wave of cold air hit me, like the breath of something ancient escaping. Inside were stacks of papers, photographs, and a single key tied with a red ribbon. The photos were all of my mother, smiling, young, happy. But in every picture there was someone else cut out, literally, torn away. My mother's arm would be draped around someone who was no longer there, leaving only jagged white space. I felt a chill creep up my spine. The papers underneath were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to my mother from my aunt, or rather from Marlene to Lila. The earliest dated back to when I was a child. The first few were affectionate, sisterly, but as the years went on, they darkened. The handwriting grew erratic, the tone desperate. "You took everything from me. He was mine first. You'll regret this, Lila." I sat there in shock, my fingers trembling over each word. My aunt's bitterness hadn't started with me. It had started long before. My mother had taken something or someone, and Marlene had never forgiven her. But the last letter was the most disturbing. "You'll never tell her the truth. You'll never tell her what he did or what I did to stop it. But one day she'll know. The house will tell her." My stomach dropped. The house will tell her. I grabbed the key, not even knowing what it opened, and ran upstairs. The house felt different now. Alive. The creaks in the floorboards no longer felt random. They sounded like whispers, like someone guiding me. I checked every lock, every drawer, every hidden corner until I reached the attic. I'd never been up there before. My aunt always said it was unsafe. The door was sealed with an old padlock. My hands shook as I slid the key in, and it turned smoothly. The lock clicked open. The door creaked as I pushed it. Dust swirled in the air, illuminated by the dim light filtering through the window. The attic smelled of mothballs and forgotten memories. Old trunks, furniture draped in sheets, a rocking chair in the corner. I walked slowly, the floorboards groaning under my feet. Then I saw it, a small chest in the center of the room, newer than everything else. There was a note taped to it, written in my aunt's handwriting. "You wanted the truth." "Here it is," my pulse quickened. I opened the chest, and inside were photos again. But this time, not of my mother. They were of me, dozens of them, from childhood to adulthood, Some I recognized, taken at family gatherings, but others I had never seen before. Me sleeping. Me walking home from work. Me sitting at my desk in my tiny apartment. My breath caught in my throat. How had she... Beneath the photos were journal pages. I began reading, and with every line my stomach turned. She doesn't remember. Lila made sure of that. She told her lies just like she lied to him. But Amelia is mine. She always was. I dropped the paper, my hands shaking violently. My aunt's obsession hadn't just been about control. It had been about possession. She believed she was my real mother. I flipped through more pages, each entry more disturbing than the last. I tried to tell her, but she wouldn't believe me. Lila stole her from me. She took everything. So I took what I could. The house will bring her back to me. It always does. My head spun. I backed away from the chest, knocking over a lamp. The sound echoed through the attic. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Suddenly I heard footsteps downstairs, slow, deliberate. Someone was in the house. I grabbed the key and the letters, shoving them into my pocket, and crept toward the attic door. The footsteps grew louder. "Amelia?" The voice was faint, trembling. "It's me." My heart nearly stopped. It was her, my aunt. I froze, clutching the railing as I listened to her ascend the stairs. "You found it, didn't you?" she said softly, her voice echoing up the stairwell. "You found our secret." I backed away slowly, toward the far end of the attic. "You're sick," I managed to whisper. "You need help," she laughed, a low, broken sound. "Help? I tried to help your mother. I tried to protect you. She lied to both of us, Amelia. She kept you from me. I'm the one who cared for you when she couldn't." "You abused me," I shot back. "You made me feel worthless." "I made you strong," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I made you into the woman who could survive this world. Don't you see? You're just like me." "No," I said, stepping forward, my voice shaking but firm. "That's exactly what I'll never be." Her expression twisted into rage, and for a moment I thought she'd lunge at me. But then she smiled, a slow, eerie smile that chilled me to the bone. "You think you own this house now?" she said. "But you don't. You never will. Because this house isn't yours, Amelia. It's ours." The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. And then, without another word, she turned and disappeared down the stairs. When I ran after her moments later, the door was wide open and she was gone. Just like that. Vanished into the night. I stood on the porch, heart pounding, the cold air burning my lungs. I wanted to believe it was over. But deep down, I knew this story, the one my subscribers thought was just a tale of revenge and redemption, had only just begun. Because somewhere between the lies, the letters, and the whispers of this house was a truth I was still terrified to uncover.